Hello, everybody. This is the Fantasy Sports Boss. Welcome to the Fantasy Sports Boss Fantasy Football Podcast. It is Friday, August 11th of 2023, and we have breaking news as we come on. Anybody that saw the short video I just posted a couple of minutes ago, Davante Adams, the top wideout, perennial wide receiver one for the Las Vegas Raiders, was laid out during 11-on-11 drills, a cooperative between the 49ers and the Raiders. He was down for a while, was looked at by trainers, limped off. Was looked at further on the sideline. Then he went back to the team facility, locker room, whatever you want to call it, to get looked at. So, concerning for sure. Now, as always, you know, we got to do with situations like this. Let's not overreact, even though it's always easy to do that. And we're still, you know, a good month out from the regular season starting, so no need to panic just yet. If you've already drafted and you drafted Adams, which you shouldn't if you were listening to this channel, because I've been telling you guys to fade him for a while now, you know, due to his quarterback, the state of the team, the offense in general, the head coach, you name it. And his age, he's now 30. Soft tissue injuries crop up for receivers that reach that age. So these are all factors that have me fading that late first round price tag for Davante Adams. But again, discuss the preseason games that were yesterday. We have more games tonight. Also wanted to discuss today, as part of the feature today, is the common mistakes that people make in fantasy football, particularly drafts. So I'm gonna get into that a little bit later on today. Like I said, spice in the news of the day. So make sure you're a subscriber. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Live stream later on. It's Football Friday, so around 4 o'clock Eastern time. So again, have that notification button hit if I'm a little early, if I'm a little late. If you have that notification button hit, then you'll know when I'm coming on. So, yes, again, Davante Adams, that's the big story right now. Going to stay on top of that. Wanted to start with taking a look at the preseason games from yesterday. There were 2 games that took place. I'm pulling that up right now just to go over it. And really, this is the first, week of preseason games other than the Jets and the Browns who played in the Hall of Fame game. And, not much is expected in this first week in terms of key players, being involved in the action. There's just little incentive to get guys injured in a meaningless game. But there are some instances, like in the Texans game against the New England Patriots, where you have the number 1 draft pick quarterback C.J. Stroud, who played and he completed 2 of 4 passes for 13 yards and interception. He did tuck it twice and ran for 6 yards. So this is something, so Stroud didn't do a lot of running in college. He wasn't asked to do much of that, but he is capable. He's a capable runner. He's got good speed. So I could see that being part of his weapon. And really, the offensive line for Houston is not great, so Stroud is probably going to be under duress a lot. So that could result in more rushing yardage, 200-plus rushing yardage for sure. Whatever he gets on top of that would be a bonus. But, really, it was just a cameo appearance. Davis Mills threw a touchdown, as did Case Keenum. So those two are really battling out to be the backup. Both guys are capable. Case Keenum, we've seen him a long time. He's a very capable, one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL, but obviously there's no fantasy upside there. Bailey Zappi got the start for Mac Jones. And in this situation, Zappi seems to be a favorite of Bill Belichick. And Zappi was great yesterday, 12 of 14. He gets the ball out quick. He put up crazy numbers, but at a lower level in college. Came right out in his first start last season in place of an injured Mac Jones. Did very well. He completed, like I said, 12 of 14 yesterday for 79 yards. He's got some more juice in his legs than Mac Jones has, which really is not saying much. But this is a situation that bears watching, because if Mac Jones, who really earned a lot of criticism, and rightly so, in what was a pretty ugly performance by him, both, throwing the football and maturity with his antics on the field last season. So this is something that we're going to probably have to keep an eye on, in terms of a possible change there. Running games for both teams. So for the Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson, with no Dalvin Cook signing, no Leonard Fournette signing, no Ezekiel Elliott signing, is still the clear-cut number 1 guy. And his PPR running back 1 label, high-end running back 1 label, is solidified for now, unless they do bring in somebody else. But I was interested. Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris got good run behind them. Neither guy impressed. Strong was better, 6 for 21 on the ground. Harris was terrible, 8 for 10 running the football. So nothing really happening there. As far as the receiving game, the only thing that really stood out was Tank Dell. Very, very, very explosive guy that I think is going to be somebody we're going to have to monitor. You don't have to go out and draft him, but this is a very thin Houston receiving core that certainly needs, they got to give as much help as they can to their rookie quarterback. And Dell, who put up some big numbers in college, caught 5 passes for 65 yards, 13, a reception, and a touchdown. So he looked really good. And listen, you talk about explosive speed. Tank Dell has it. You don't want to throw around Tyreek Hill comparisons, but similar build, similar speed, explosive element that he brings to the table. So at least for the very, beginning of this season, we got to watch this. Nico Collins, cameo, 1 catch for 8 yards. Nothing happening with Dalton Schultz, who I think is going to lead this team in receptions. So really the only fantasy aspect to come out of this is Tank Dell, who's now firmly on my watch list. He wasn't before this, but listen, there was anybody who saw that game yesterday, and I saw the highlights, he's very explosive. There's no doubt about it. So Seattle knocked off Minnesota. Drew Lock, he threw 2 touchdowns, also threw a pick. It is what it is. Nick Mullins. Zach Carbonet, the rookie. So 4 carries, 14 yards. But showed he can contribute again in the passing game. 2 catches for 14 yards. So Kenneth Walker didn't play. I've said this a million times already this summer. There is not a better handcuff backup that you need to own other than this kid, Carbonet. There's nobody that I'd rather have as my top handcuff back than this kid. He has 3 down ability, no doubt. I watched almost every single snap he took in college when I put out my NFL draft guide every year, my prospect guide. This kid's the real deal. He runs with a firm base, good power, solid speed, not a burner, but solid speed, and he could really catch the football. He could really, really, really catch the football. Kenneth Walker doesn't. Kenneth Walker gets hurt a lot. No doubt he's an explosive runner. He's the more explosive of the two, so they can work in tandem. But if Walker gets hurt again and he has that upright running style that leads to injuries, I'm telling you, this kid from UCLA is really going to be something in fantasy football. He really is going to be something. He can't go undrafted. It's certainly if you own Kenneth Walker, you got to own him as well. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 3 catches, 25 yards. He's going to be a big weapon out of the slot. He's just going to be. I'm out on the 3rd round price tag of DK Metcalf because of this kid and still very capable Tyler Lockett, who's going as wide receiver 28, which is complete insanity. And I brought this stat up many times. He's the only, talking about Tyler Lockett, he is the only wide receiver in football to have caught at least 8 touchdowns each of the last 4 seasons. You can look it up, the only one. And he's going as wide receiver 28. So DK Metcalf, while he's going to make the splash plays, Lockett owned him in touchdowns last year. And now you have this kid from Ohio State, Jackson Smith. He is going to be another. Seattle had a great draft this last May, no doubt about it. And Jackson Smith by far was the top receiver in the NFL draft this past spring. And they're going to use him a lot. 3 wide receiver sets have been used commonly for Seattle during the summer here. He did a lot of 3 receiver sets throughout, mini camps and whatnot. He's well worth. This reminds me of the situation with Antonio Brown, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, where all 3 guys were fantasy relevant before Brown lost his shit. Same situation here. Now, obviously, Seattle's not going to throw the ball anywhere near as often as Miami. So, will any of these guys catch 90 passes? Probably not. But Metcalf can get 80. Lockett can get near 80. Jackson Smith can get 70. And because there's nobody at tight end that they're going to throw to. So it's still a very narrow target tree. Look at Minnesota. Everybody wants Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison. Well, those are their 3 main targets. But we all want them. There's no talk of, the target distribution. There's been talk about that in Seattle, including myself. I'll admit it. Metcalf, Lockett, their numbers are going to go down because of Jackson Smith. Well, if we use the same logic we used in Minnesota, or like we used to in Tampa Bay with Seattle, it's going to work, I think, for all 3 of them. Speaking of Jordan Addison, 1 catch for 22 yards. I drafted Justin Jefferson 2nd overall in my 1 league, and we're doing the slow draft. I might be inclined to take Addison later on as like a receiver handcuff, but I'm not really going to chase him. So tonight, the schedule: Green Bay, Cincinnati, Giants, Detroit. Atlanta, Miami, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, Washington, Cleveland, and Denver, Arizona. So we have a lot of games tonight. 6 games tonight. Hopefully we don't have any big injuries. You don't want to see that, obviously, this early. And no update yet on Davante Adams. I'll check on that. D'Amico Ryan said Tank Dell is going to be an explosive playmaker for us. All right, so D'Amico Ryan's, he's not going to have an issue getting snaps early on. That's basically what Ryan's was saying. John Mechie, Robert Woods, neither guy to me is a threat. There's a little unknown about John Mechie, who did, caught a lot of passes in college. Nico Collins still has to prove he can be the guy. Pete Carroll, Zach Carbonet looked really physically fit. That's what he said. Kenneth Walker, Kenneth Walker wasn't going to play anyway because he's got a core injury, so we got to see what happens there. The Raiders signed Damian Williams, so not sure this is a shot across the bow at Josh Jacobs, but they got to get another body in to back up Zamir White until this whole thing with Jacobs sorts itself out. And Williams really hasn't been relevant for a while. Rex Burkhead, I believe, was brought in as well, and Williams wound up getting that. So Kevin O'Connell, Minnesota coach, praised Ty Chandler, so he looks to be the backup to Alexander Mattison. And I think that's pretty much it in terms of... All right, so also Shane Steichen, the coach from the Colts, said that he's unsure when Jonathan Taylor will resume practicing. Man, other than the holdout guys, Jonathan Taylor is radioactive to me right now in fantasy football. You can't even go near the guy. Now, I get it that his draft price is starting to really fall now. He was at 12, now he's at 17 and falling. If he goes into the 3rd round, that's the point where you start to think to yourself, Jesus, I could get Jonathan Taylor in the 3rd round. But he's still hurt. The ankle is still a problem. He's got a running quarterback now who's going to take, carries away from him around the red zone. So that's an issue for sure. As I said from the very beginning, I'm completely out on Jonathan Taylor. All right, let me look at Davante Adams. I have gotten no updates yet. Done for the day. Still not back out here after leaving the locker room with the limp of his right leg still being evaluated. All right, so it doesn't look like Philip Dorsett also left early. Wow. So this whole thing with the 49ers, this cooperative here, not off to a good start for the Raiders. So we got to see here. Right leg injury. All right, that's all we got right now. So Adams is being tended to right now. Who knows? There's no point even speculating. We're not. We have no idea. It could be just precautionary. I don't see there, being any cause to panic, at least not yet. All right. So, but when you see a big name guy go down early in the preseason, still relatively early in the drafting season, it's not really early anymore. There's, drafts really getting underway. But if you can help it, make sure you have those drafts as far as you can into August, beginning of September. So that way it mitigates the loss in situations such as this, if this turns out to be a significant injury for Davante Adams. So we'll just have to see. All right. So the other thing I wanted to talk about today is some common mistakes that get done in a draft. All right. Some of them are obvious. Some of them are not so obvious. The obvious ones are, don't take a kicker or even a defense until your last 2 picks of the draft. This one has been repeated ad nauseum for years and years and years. I've said kickers, the true skill of a kicker is not indicative of his point output in fantasy football, because you can have the best kicker in the game, but if his offense scores touchdowns at a high rate, he's not kicking field goals and he's not giving you points. You can have a so-so kicker on an offense that doesn't score and continues to give them short yardage field goals, and that kicker can put up a lot of points. Totally dependent on the offense that there are. So that's why in both of my leagues, we did away with the kicker. I think you need to change with the times and get rid of it as well, because there's no relevancy to it in the game anymore. And like I said, if you really break it down, the true skill of the kicker does not come through in fantasy football. Now, defense. Still have defense in one of my 2 leagues. We got rid of it in the other. So we got rid of kicker and defense in one of my leagues, and it's great. I'm totally on streaming defenses. Every year, the number 1 defense that's drafted usually doesn't come anywhere close to repeating. You're better off streaming. I've always streamed defenses. Looking ahead a couple of weeks, you could do that. Maybe add an extra defense on your bench there. But that's how I almost always handle defense if you're still playing using defenses in your teams. All right, so the other thing, and this one is a controversial take. I got into this the other day with somebody that invited me to discuss the upcoming season. Another Twitter podcaster, and we were talking about the stack, like a Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, whatever. I, for one, am not on board with stacks, and for a number of reasons. Now, I get it. You own Mahomes and Kelce. The 2 of them are the absolute best at their position. Mucho points, especially this year. There's nobody for Mahomes to throw to. Kelce's going to get a ton of work, right? So I totally get it, no doubt. The reason why I don't like stacks, the number 1 reason is, for sure, when your bye week comes, that's almost, unless you have really good depth, that it's going to be really hard for you to win that week. You're almost sacrificing that week. Your quarterback, let's say you have Mahomes and Kelce, they're both off the bye. They're both on the bye. It's impossible to replace those points. All right? The other thing is, let's say you have Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. And I actually had this situation a couple of years ago. And it's December in Buffalo, and you get a blizzard, which happened against New England. I believe it was like week 13. Massive Monday night blizzard, snow, wind, everything. I had both guys. I started them both. I didn't have anybody else. I didn't have any other quarterback to put in. You got to play Stephon Diggs no matter what. They both bombed royally because of the weather. I think Diggs had less than, I think he had 7 or 8 fantasy points. Allen, I believe, had 13. It was a fucking abomination. I lost that week when I really needed a win to solidify a playoff spot. I lost that week badly. I'll never forget it. So if you have a stack like that, and you have an ill weather game, heavy rain, ice, wind, snow, both of those guys could be screwed, as it was in that game. Then when you add in the fact that I had both guys on a bye in another week, that was 2 weeks lost to a stack out of, 13 or 14 regular season weeks. All right. And that's not even taking into consideration any sort of injuries, which could afflict anybody. Also, how about this? Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, to stick with that, playing the Jets wasn't very pretty for those guys last year. Stephon Diggs, both times against Sauce Gardner, really, really struggled. Mediocre outputs. Josh Allen, was just okay. And then you have a Bill Belichick defense. I mentioned the Patriots already. So that stack, Allen and Diggs, susceptible to the weather, susceptible to the Jets defense, which looks great and has Sauce Gardner, and DJ Reed, who's no slouch. He's a top 10 corner. And then a Bill Belichick defense, which you never underestimate. Then the weather. So that's a lot of potential issues for a stack. I always try to make sure my bye weeks are spread out. That's another mistake. It delves into another mistake. Not being aware of the bye weeks. You don't want to have too many guys on bye weeks. I know week 13 last year was a big one. I think 6 teams are on a bye this week. I think this year again, I believe week 13 or week 12 has a lot of teams on a bye. So not being aware of the bye is a problem. Now, I was guilty of this earlier in the summer when I was talking about Geno Smith and Deshaun Watson. Get both of them and just interchange them. Well, they both had the same bye. Oops. I still think it's a great combo, those two guys. 1 week you'd have to just pick up another quarterback, but whatever. Obviously, you want to have both of your quarterbacks with different buys, all right? You want to have as much buy diversity as you can on your team so you don't have 3 or 4 guys on the buy in the same week, all right? So that's another mistake. Another mistake that many make in fantasy football is the second tier tight end. All right. And I've talked about this a lot. So Travis Kelce, love him. I have the 8th pick in my other league. I'm going to take him if he's there. No questions asked. I've been consistent on this all summer. The next tier, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, don't want any of them. I think they're all overpriced. You only play one tight end, and this is another thing that, well, that's a separate one. I'll wait on that. But anyway, tight ends, the second tier tight ends tend to be very overpriced. So let's look at it right now, according in PPR leagues, what their ADPs are. So right now at this very moment, Mark Andrews is 26 overall tight end 2. All right, so that's the very beginning of the 3rd round. Right after him, Davante Smith, T. Higgins, Najee Harris, Chris Olave, Travis Etienne, Breece Hall. I'd rather have all of those guys with the exception of maybe Higgins instead of Mark Andrews. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is 36. I'd rather have him than Mark Andrews. Aaron Jones at 39, Calvin Ridley at 40. I'd rather have all those guys than Mark Andrews. TJ Hawkinson, right now, he's tight end 3, 42 overall. Right behind him is Keenan Allen. Justin Fields, I'd rather have Justin Fields. Justin Herbert, love both of those guys. Miles Sanders at 47, I'd rather have him. George Kittle right now is at 48. George Kittle, who has never played a full season, who is in a stacked offense, that doesn't throw the ball that much. He's 48 right now. All right, so that's the very end of the 4th round. Right behind him is Dameon Pierce. I'd rather have Dameon Pierce. Jerry Jeudy at 53. I'd rather have him. Darren Waller at 54. I'd rather have Waller at 54 than Kittle at 48. Wow, Waller's really come up too, guys. He was in the 7th round. Now he's in the 5th. Getting a little pricey. I'm good with Waller. But that second tier of tight end always is overpriced. Always. And I talked about it this morning. In the late round gems, you can get late round tight ends at a very, very affordable price. Very affordable. Another big mistake, PPR leagues, drafting running backs that don't catch the football. All right, it's very, very pressurized for those guys to score. They have to score almost every week to give you the numbers that a PPR back would. That doesn't even have to score. Now, Derrick Henry is the exception. He's just so freaking good and scores so many touchdowns that it's not even worth talking about him in this sense. All right? But Isaiah Pacheco, clear case. Be very careful with him. He's got to score touchdowns because he didn't catch the football. Kenneth Walker, not only does he have the kid from UCLA to worry about, he too has to score because he doesn't catch the football. Nick Chubb, I'll put him in that same tier as Derrick Henry. Not worried about him. Who else here? Cam Akers doesn't catch the ball a lot, but he's going to get a lot of workload. J.K. Dobbins, same thing. Going to need to score. All right? So those guys can be very frustrating if they don't score. They're going to have to catch a lot of passes, and that's not part of their deal. Another mistake is overlooking potential running back 2s who catch the football. These guys get overlooked a lot. Antonio Gibson, looking at you. Antonio Gibson with no J.D. McKissick is going to put up points in PPR leagues. He's being drafted, talking about Gibson, he's being drafted behind A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams. I'd rather have Antonio Gibson by far. All right, he's going to catch a lot of passes in that offense. So guys like that, we have to be aware of guys like that who can catch the football at a high rate, but who are slipping in drafts. All right, I mean, Antonio Gibson is the poster boy for that. He could be a running back, low-end running back too, in PPR leagues because he catches the ball a lot. Another mistake is being the first guy to take a quarterback. I mean, this is as old as it gets. Never be the first one to take a quarterback. I don't care how good they are. And I used to be all about, wait. I'll be the 12th guy to take a quarterback. Now I've amended that. You know I have. All of you know I have been all about that dual threat quarterback. So I want to get one of those top 9, top 10 guys. But I'm going to look to that middle, the next tier. You know, the top, really tier 3, because tier 1 is Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts. Not going to get any of those guys. The next tier is Burrow and Jackson. Probably not going to get them. I've had Lamar Jackson every year. It's starting to get a little bit annoying with the injuries. But that third tier, Justin Herbert, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson. Those 4 guys, I'm going to end up with almost on all my teams. I can tell you that right now. I don't want Dak. I don't want Tua. Daniel Jones, QB 14. Geno Smith, QB 15. Anthony Richardson, QB 16 is a backup. Yes, to all 3. You need the dual threat quarterback. And yet that's another mistake. Don't draft the stationary quarterback anymore. I used to love drafting the Tony Romos and the Matt Ryans of the Atlanta Falcons, right? The Aaron Rodgers. Well, Rodgers used to run back then, but Tom Brady, right? Matthew Stafford for years. Last year drove that point home. That is no longer the way to go. So Dak Prescott is that guy now. He doesn't run anymore. Aaron Rodgers is that guy now. He doesn't run anymore. Kirk Cousins. Listen, he's right around QB 12 every year. All the props, all the respect in the world for Kirk Cousins, but he gives you nothing on the ground. So it's a very fine line with him as well. Jared Goff, same thing. All right. Matthew Stafford, obviously. Derek Carr. All right. Guys like that. Russell Wilson now, I think. You know, Bryce Young, we don't know how much he's going to run. So we got to be careful with that. Another mistake. Don't draft too many guys on the same team. That kind of goes along with the stack. But, you know, are you going to take Jahmyr Gibbs at running back and Amon-Ra St. Brown at wide receiver? I don't think you should do that. All right? Again, whether you want to diversify. It's like a stock portfolio. You want to diversify your team as much as you can. Spread it out buy-wise. Spread it out team-wise. All right? Late rounds. Forget the veterans, right? The boring veterans in the late rounds. You want upside. Go upside all the way in the later rounds. All right? It's so much you could wind up with potential league winning guys in the late rounds if you pick the upside guys, not the steady, boring veterans who are going, you know, like a quarterback, for instance. Jared Goff, you can have him as your backup. But you could also have Anthony Richardson. All right? Or CJ Stroud. Guys who have upside that can easily outproduce where they're drafted. That's another thing. Another thing that people make a mistake on. They don't always see that aspect of things. All right? And finally, be aware of any head coach or offensive coordinator changes. All right? Because this is a big one. You know, you'll see a player's stats from last season. Wow, look at these numbers. It's going to be awesome. All right, James Conner in Arizona. Look at those numbers. He was great. They fired the head coach. They brought in a new coach who's going firmly away from the Cliff Kingsbury rapid-fire offense and is going to slow the pace down greatly. What does this mean? Well, James Conner's going to have fewer carries, fewer pass receptions. When you slow it down, you eat the clock. You have fewer snaps, fewer plays on offense. Less numbers. So, Colts, let's look at the new, we got a new head coach there, Steichen. All right? Always take a look at the new offenses coming in. Mike McCarthy in Dallas. Is CeeDee Lamb going to catch 90 passes in this offense when McCarthy wants to run the ball? I don't know. So be aware of the offensive coordinator changes and the head coach changes. These are all key things that people often overlook. All right, so that's about it for the podcast, guys. Again, hit the subscribe button. More on Davante Adams, so stay tuned. Live stream later on today. Tune in for that around 4 o'clock Eastern time. I'll see you later.